Divided. And we'll start with Mr. Hannah.
Well, good evening. First, I'd like to thank the teacher in my life, Christy, for being here, my mother, Joan, and other members of our team. When I was 23 years old, I took a job at Leon High School as a security monitor. This summer, I turned 60. Over the last 37 years, I've served in numerous capacities: security monitor, teacher, coach, dean of students, assistant principal, divisional director, and now superintendent of schools. A strong community must have a strong public school system. We in Leon County are blessed and fortunate to have just that. Not because of me or anything I've done, because we have wonderful school leaders and amazing classroom teachers and great support staff. That's why it's hard for charters and private schools to make it in Leon County. It's an honor for me to serve as superintendent. I've been here my entire life. I'm a product of our public schools. I would not live anyplace else. And I'm looking forward to tonight's event. So thank you so much.
Mr. Burgess?
I'm Joe Burgess. I am not a native of Tallahassee. I'm actually a military brat. Wonderful man right there is my father. Served 42 years in the United States Army. So we moved all around the world. And my sister came down here for college, and I followed her. And I decided to make Tallahassee my home. My dad grew up in a little place right near here called Mount Pleasant. If you've ever been on your way to Chattahoochee and you blink, you've passed. So I've had the wonderful privilege of serving inside of Leon County schools. I've been a coach, a teacher. I've been a dean, athletic director. I've been a principal at elementary, Springwood, principal at middle school, at Swift Creek Middle School, and a principal at high school the last 13 years at Charles High School. It is an honor to be at all those places and serve inside of this county. I love this place. It is, I think the right word is honor. It is an honor to serve. It is an honor to try to make decisions and make things better for people every day. Is that the timer? Yes. I apologize. I can go on all day.
That's why we have a timer.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, all right. We're going to get started with our questions. We will alternate asking the questions, and we will also move down the line this way. So we'll start with caseload caps for ESE teachers and service providers. ESE teachers and service providers such as SLPs, OTs, and PTs often have workloads that exceed reasonable expectations. How do you plan to address the need for caseload caps that consider total workload? And how do you intend to help ESE teachers and service providers better support students? And we'll start with Mr. Hand.
So as you well know, we're in the middle of our negotiations, and that's one of the topics that we're talking about is class size caps and how to address those issues. We closely monitor all of our ESE classrooms each and every day. We meet with school principals. I bring the director of special student education, Kathy Shields, with me. So if we are approaching classrooms that are exceeding numbers that we need to make adjustments, we'll hire additional staff, additional paraprofessionals. In one situation now, we've moved to another school that has capacity. I am committed, however, to going to the Florida legislature like I did last year. They have and must do better when it comes to funding students with special needs. Things have changed significantly. The behaviors that we are seeing have changed significantly, especially post-COVID. So I am committed to join LCTA and LESPA and the other unions to go to the legislature to demand better because we are having a tough time, as you know, finding teachers and finding paraprofessionals to work in these roles. But we are committed to do our best, the best job we can to support and uplift our teachers and our paraprofessionals that wake up every single day to make a difference in these children's lives.
Thank you. Mr. Burgess,
All right.
Same question.
So our ESC teachers and our paraprofessionals, their voices have been loud about the issues that they're having inside of ESC classrooms. So we have got to be cognizant of making sure that we help out with the caseload caps. That's a real thing. There comes a point where those teachers are overworked and they run out. I think it also is at such a point that we had a few schools last year that had ESC classrooms that did not have a teacher all year. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to institute things like premium pay. And that is where we give a higher pay for those positions because we are federally mandated to do more with those students, and we should. We also should look at, when we have district staff who are in teaching positions, And as much as we want them to help support the district, when we have schools that have gone all year without an ESC teacher in the classroom, those district staff members should be going back into the classroom until we can find a teacher, and then they can come back to the district. But it is important that we prioritize the need of the classroom at the school. That need is always more important than the district.
Thank you.
Take a quick minute to just ask if your phone is not silenced, if you could do that right now. Thank you. This one is going to start with you, Mr. Burgess,
Okay.
and each of you have 2 minutes. This is about unpaid work and overburdened schedules. Many educators report working significant unpaid hours to meet the demands of their roles. What is your stance on unpaid labor in education, and how will you ensure fair compensation for teachers working beyond their contracted hours?
All right. So first of all, let's just put it out there. You're never going to get paid for what your true value is. Okay. But it is important that we have things written and stated for everyone to know. So, and that goes two ways. There is unpaid work that goes with the work inside the school, the classroom work, and outside the classroom. And then there's unpaid work as far as like activities and clubs. And so both issues need to be met. As far as what we need to do, well, first of all, we need to make sure that we find a way to capture that properly, and then make sure it's documented, and then find ways to pay for it. That doesn't mean you can have everything, but it certainly means that we need to make sure we can look at it. We need to make sure that representatives on each campus have the freedom and the ability and the flexibility to make sure that they're speaking with administrators, they can speak with the district to make sure that the employees are getting properly compensated. We should not have people who are doing work and they're not getting paid or compensated. There should be some kind of compensation for that package. If we don't do that, it's just like a bad marriage. If you don't take care of the people, they will leave. So we must do that.
Bad marriage. I like that. Yeah. So this is also something that we have been talking about at the negotiation table, and I fully agree, and that's why we have hourly as needed positions set up. So let's say an ESC teacher is out on medical leave, and their IEPs have to be taken over by the other member of the teams, that we can work and put that teacher, those other teachers that are picking up that extra workload, on hourly as needed and compensate them for the additional time. Another thing that we've talked about recently is, let's say we have an elementary school and they're supposed to have 4 fourth grade teachers, but they can't find a fourth grade teacher. They can't find a fourth teacher. So those students have to be split among the other 3. That we can come back to the table and talk about the additional load that those teachers are having to carry because that teacher was missing. I think it's going to go back to your marriage, right? Us communicating effectively for us to fully understand what your needs are, and then to find creative ways to meet those needs.
Thank you.
Excellent. Our next question here is going to start with you, Mr. Hanna. This is on secondary income for teachers. Do you understand the financial pressures that lead many teachers to seek secondary employment? What will you do to improve teacher compensation so that they are not forced to work additional jobs to make ends meet, and they can focus on the success of the students they serve?
Yeah, so I'm really proud of the work we've done over the last 8 years in the area of teacher compensation. The problem is we're having a hard time keeping up with inflation. Things have just gotten so much more expensive. The governor had an initiative to move the beginning teacher salaries, and the state of Florida has given us a little over $12 million in that effort. In addition, Leon County Schools, we have added another $14.4 million. So in total, over $26 million, where even veteran teachers today are making $1,000 more per month than they were when I took office. It will never be enough, but we have to go to the legislature to demand better. There's talk this year a $50 increase per student. That's insane. $50. That won't even pay the increased cost for healthcare. We can only cut so much at the district level, and I've been committed to doing that. When I came into this position, I weighed 175 pounds. I'm down to a $160. My wife says if I lose another pound, I'm gonna blow away. I have been committed to that work, to pushing money down into our classrooms, into our schools, and to our employees. And although I'm proud of the work we have done, we still have a long way to go. And it breaks my heart, teachers that I see having to work at Publix or other jobs, second jobs, to ensure for their family. But I'm committed. I live with a teacher. I know the pain. I understand it. I work during the day and I hear it at night. And I'm committed to continue to try to move the needle. not only beginning teacher pay, but now to address the issue of compression, which that caused. And so working side by side with you all and LCTA's leadership, along with LESPA, I think we can get that done. But we have to go to the legislature. We have to talk to our House reps and our senators and in the governor's office to say, public education can no longer rank number 49 or 50th in the country. The children in the state of Florida deserve better.
Okay. So I hear that and I understand that, but I think it's really important that we talk about who has received raises, right? We've had district leadership get some raises. We've had principals get raises. And I will tell you that every dollar, I don't care if it only gave all the teachers $100, they should have went to the teachers. Okay. Executives make enough money. We shouldn't be taking dollars off the table that should be going to our teachers. If you're going to ask me who do I need more, and I love every principal, some of them are my friends, but I need the teachers first. I need the support staff first. They have direct impact with students. And so we should be giving every bit of dollars that we can, you know, and I agree. Yes, there are things and conversations that we need to have with the legislature, and it is important, but we got to look at ourselves first. While they're thinking about it, we already have the dollars that we have committed to us. What are we doing with our dollars? How are we giving monies to our teachers? We need to be looking through every coffer, reviewing every budget, audit everything that we do, and make sure that they have it. And again, I say, it is important because if we don't pay them, they will leave. And I don't want them to leave. Our kids need them. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this next question, in no particular order, just happens to follow up with that. This starts with Mr. Burgess. Recent reports suggest that raises for administrative positions outpace those offered to educators and staff. In addition, administrative roles rank higher than teachers in Leon County when compared to other districts in the state. How will you ensure fair and equitable pay for teachers and support staff compared to district administrators?
So first of all, be transparent with your records. You need to be able to see the budget. You need to be able to see where the money goes, right? If I'm a person of my word, you should be able to see it. You should be able to come look at it, right? If I just say, trust me, what is that? So we got to make sure that you guys can see it. And number two is that, as I just said, if you're an executive, you're not going to see that. Like, first of all, we got to make sure that our teachers, our support staff, they get paid first. We can come back later on and take care of executives, but we're going to make sure that our committed staff are going to receive monies first. Thank you.
Mr. Hannah, thank you.
So Mr. Burgess is right. Principals did get an increase, including Mr. Burgess. They have a tough job. Okay. I can assure you though, when I took office, our district cost centers, salaries, and everything we do at the district represented about 12% of the entire budget. Today, it represents 10.5%. We've reduced district costs by 1.5% of our total budget. Years past, it would be percent increases across the board. Let's say everyone received a 3% increase. Well, that 3% is much different. Judy Miller taught me this in high school. 3% is much different for someone making $100,000 a year as compared to someone making $50,000 a year. Actually, it's 50% less. And so I did away with that. So our administrators, our exempt staff are receiving exactly what everyone else receives. This year, the bus drivers received $1 an hour increase. The administrators received $1 an hour increase. The teachers, we've offered a little bit more. So I've done away with that percentage across the board program because in the end, those administrative salaries were being increased at a higher rate than others. So we did away with that eight years ago. I'm not sure exactly where you had those statistics. Our records are transparent. Mr. Mazur does public records requests. Other unions do public records requests. This issue has never been brought in my 8 years as superintendent. And if it was an issue, I feel fairly confident it would have been brought forward. But we will continue to look at those numbers. But again, I'm not paying our administrators on an annual increase any more than anyone else.
The next category is teacher, well, actually they kind of still go together, teacher retention and recruitment. And this will go to Mr. Hannah first. We're hearing about strategies to recruit new teachers, but a lacking in clarity on strategies that are being implemented to retain our high qualified educators in Leon County. Given recent concerns about burnout, support, and working conditions, what do you plan to do to boost teacher retention?
So, and I like the way you phrased that, retention first, right? And it is just that. So we recently named a director of teacher retention and recruitment, and her sole focus is to do just that, and to find avenues by which we can get feedback from school administrators like Ms. Clemens and Ms. McFarland and others to give teachers the ability, and not just teachers, but support staff, the ability to come forward with issues, so we can address those issues before burnout happens or before they've put in a letter of resignation. And we are committed to do that, but it's going to take resources at the district and then open lines of communication again for us to know where the problems are. Is it professional development? Is it classroom management? Exactly where can we help intervene to keep keep teachers in the profession? Because the people you sitting at this table are more the exception than the rule now. You know, my wife Christy has been teaching 29 years. Unfortunately, more the exception than the rule. Once we get people into what I consider the greatest profession in the world, it's incumbent upon us to enact measures that keep them engaged and keep them happy.
Thank you.
All right, so if we're talking about retention, first of all, we need to recognize that our current program of 1 year of support is not enough. Most of the teachers that come into the profession used to go to Florida State, Florida A&M, Flagler, and they would go for 4 years and they would have a lot of study inside of school. Most of our teachers coming in now come from outside of school. So you actually have to start talking to your schools about giving additional support beyond 1 year. It needs to be 3 to 4 years, and that's true investment in the person. You also have to look at your mentor teachers and what are you giving them, because they are burnt out, right? They're burnt out. So they need some compensation to help them do that work, because it's a heavy lift. You're teaching your class, and you're trying to make sure that this person that we really believe can be in the classroom has the support that they need. And you must do both. And we also have to make sure that it's more than $500 in a year, right? Which works out to about $50 a month. Trust me, it is way more than that. But we got to find a way to incentivize our teachers to do that, because that is the future, is your veteran teachers talking to your new teachers and telling them the right way to be a leader, to be a teacher on campus.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Right, so similar train of thought here. We're talking about promoting teacher professionalism. Mr. Burgess, we'll go for you first. How will you work to elevate the professionalism of teachers and ensure their voices are included in the decisions that directly impact their roles in the classroom?
Okay, so that's twofold. So we got one part we do on the school level, which is just making sure you talk with your principals about what is your relationship with your representatives at school. It should be open. There should be lines of communication of ways that things can be reported, but also how things are addressed. So that is important, but also that includes our negotiating methods. And I think it's important that the people that we have sitting at the table have school level experience. It is essential. They've got to understand what it's like being in a classroom. I'm just going to use my father because he's in the military. I'll have a hard time having somebody talk about what's needed in the military and they haven't been in the foxhole. You got to have some experience to understand what people are going through. And that's one of the unique things, especially with administrators. We've been teachers before. Okay. And so we need that, and we need to make sure we prioritize the people who are talking and the way that we talk to everyone, and make sure people understand what are the pathways for them to be able to get resolution in any matter that they bring up.
So it goes back again to communication. Is what lines of communication are available where we can get on front of something with the teacher before it turns into something that we're trying to fix, right? And so I think when it comes to site-based decision-making, we give a lot of autonomy and authority to our school principals and our school leaders to manage their buildings, right? And to take care of their problems and to take care of their people. Job one for me as superintendent or as principal was school safety, was to keep everyone safe. Job two was morale, was faculty and staff morale. If the teachers walked up the hill at Leon High School in the morning and looked like they sucked on a lemon for breakfast, they weren't happy. The children weren't going to be happy. The parents weren't going to be happy. Life was going to be miserable. But if the teachers were in a good place and they were happy and felt supported, then the kids are going to be happy. The parents are going to be happy, and you're going to have a really good school year. But it's having those conversations. When I was a high school principal, I had what I called wine and cheese. It was WHINE, not WINE, where I would actually get a cheese platter and just open the door. Not that I needed to, my door was always open, but it gave teachers a chance just to come in and vent or to talk about things. And I think it's having those open lines of communication where they do feel comfortable. And it goes back to relationship building, us building relationships between administrators and teachers where they do feel comfortable coming forward and sharing their concerns and to see how we can make things as good as we possibly can to keep them engaged.
Thank you.
Our next question involves financial accountability and transparency. Many staff are not provided financial documents for their site and find the district reports to lack details. What measures will you implement to ensure transparency in district and site spending and accountability? And that starts with Mr. Hannah.
So I think I would need actually some more details of what that question entails. So if we could, when we sit down again, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that means exactly. Okay, because I want us to be as transparent as we possibly can. Again, our records are open. They're all public documents. I know there have been an issue in the past about contracts and how we got contracts out. But what happens is if you're still negotiating, as we are now in October for the 24-25 school year, we haven't distributed contracts. We need to look at that as an issue, so teachers know up front exactly what their expectations were and what their compensation will be until something is changed. But I am all about transparency. We have nothing to hide and never will. But I think it's just if there's something that you see that's not there or not available, that we need to get it to you, whether that's at the district level or at a school site.
Thank you.
So I have a unique perspective. I've actually asked for records from the district before. So what I'm going to tell you is, and I mean this, and there's a lot of great people who work in the district, but first of all, it is slow. I mean, that's the first thing. Okay. You ask for a record, come on back next year. I mean, it is really slow. It takes that long to get records. And I don't know why that is a process issue, but you have to make it a priority. If somebody asks for something, they should get it. And it should be, in an expedient manner. They should not have to wait. And that's part of the system, because a lot of times people just give up and they just stop. Okay. The other thing is that sometimes the records that when people ask for records from certain individuals, there is either terse or even at times a rude response that goes with it. And that then gets people to not want to ask for that. And so I'm not saying that is always the case, but just like at a school, if it happens with one, all of a sudden that one person talks to somebody else. And so we got to make sure, yes, be open and transparent, but make sure that we have good dialogue and that we make sure that we get it in an expeditious manner.
The next topic is classroom, and this is going to be for you, Mr. Burgess, first. Okay. Classroom resources and financial support for teachers. Many teachers are forced to use personal funds for classroom supplies, whether it be the materials used to decorate their classrooms or those needed to provide materials for students that do not have them. What is your plan to ensure classrooms are adequately resourced and to relieve teachers of this financial burden?
Well, this is kind of a nuanced thing, but a lot of it just depends on what we as a district and working with board members decide to give to schools, right? Because being an elementary principal, I can remember, and it's even a greater issue on the elementary end, is all the materials, I mean, themes and so forth that they do inside of their classrooms. I have a clear understanding of that. And teachers do come out of their pockets. You know, there are monies that the district gives, lead money that they give to them, but that money is spent quickly, right? Just like we were talking about inflation ties that up as well. There are the department budget monies that are given, but when you go through, when paper and materials, that money goes out fast. So we've got to do a better job throughout the year. And I think part of that is having a conversation with our union LCTA membership is to say, where are we at on expenditures, right? And what do schools need? And making sure that principals, teachers, district staff have conversations continuously so that we can go back and look at those expenditures.
So when I became superintendent, each student we would give $87 for each student into the flex budget for flexible budget for a school principal. Meaning that if a student population was 1,000, we would give that principal $87,000. Whereas Mr. Burgess, let's say he has 2,000 students, it would be $87. We raised that from $87 to $110 per student shortly after I took office. Meaning now, if Mr. Burgess had 2,000 students, he'd receive $220,000. With that $220,000, it goes to fund everything from copy paper to toilet paper to supplies for teachers. We had a system set up actually at Leon High School where every department head, whether it was Judy Miller or Miss Wills or every department, based on the number of students in that department, they would receive their own departmental allocation. And then so when teachers needed copy paper or toner or different things for their classroom, they would just go to their department chair and make that request. If we need to address this issue because principals are hoarding money or sitting on money, then we need to know that, because we give principals a lot of money every year in flexible spending to support teachers where they should not have to come out of pocket.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hannah, this is going to start with you. This is on student behavior and school safety. Data shows staff are more concerned about the safety in schools due to student behavior. Given recent changes to the zero tolerance policy, how will you address student behavior management? And how do we hold students and parents accountable for their choices?
The greatest responsibility that I have as superintendent and Mr. Burgess has as a principal is safety, is school safety. And this has been an ongoing issue, especially post-COVID. We've seen coming out of the pandemic kids with much more aggressive behaviors. We have a committee that's been formed to look at our discipline, to talk about having a district-wide discipline matrix, so teachers do feel supported. When a child, as Christy would say, there's actions and there's consequences. So when children act out, that there are consequences for those actions. But I also think that we have to district-wide have that conversation to ensure what's happening at Leon is happening at Lincoln, and that those matrices are in place so that children know when they do misbehave, these are going to be the consequences. But this is an ongoing conversation, especially post-pandemic, and we're seeing a lot of those behaviors, unfortunately, in our students with exceptionalities. I mean, it's real, and in those teachers, especially in those self-contained classrooms, what they're experiencing is very, very challenging. And I do think, and that's a local negotiation issue about compensation, and when one group is compensated at a higher level than others. But it's also, to me, at the state level, we need to have that conversation about how teachers that are, especially those in self-contained classrooms, how they're compensated. Because a lot of times those children, when they act out, it's different because it's a manifestation of their disability as opposed to just acting out and knowing better, right?
Thank you, Mr. Burge.
Yeah, so in discussing student behavior, a couple of things. One, we do need some more boots on the ground. And right now, that issue, I'm really talking on the secondary level, because as much as we're always worried about the intruders who may come off campus and come and attack our schools, right now, if you were asking students, their biggest worry is who they're in the hallway with, right? And so that's and actually that's a concern for the teachers too, if you actually ask them. We also need real conversations with parents, students, and teachers, and admin. Like, they all need real conversations, right? I mean, everybody plays a role in it. So first of all, on the admin level, are we administering discipline consistently? Are you back, if something happens with a teacher, are you backing the teacher up, right? If they've gone through the rules and stuff, are you backing them up? Having real conversations with a parent. Sometimes say, hey, I need you to do your part, right? If we're coming here every day being consistent, I need you to, that doesn't mean I'm telling you how to discipline your child. It's just saying, you need to back us up and trying to help your child to be better, right? It also means talking to the teacher. When I'm talking with mine, I usually tell them when there could be times when you're having management problems where the lesson delivery is part of the reason why you're having a management problem inside of your classroom. If you're going to be real about handling the problem, you got to look at it from all levels. Nobody's off the table. You got to look at yourself. You got to look at everybody else. And we just have to be real. We have to be consistent. And we need to also have hot mic nights where we go into the neighborhoods where they can just ask us questions, and we need to be prepared to answer them.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to collaboration with the teachers union, and we'll start with Mr. Burgess. How do you plan to foster a collaborative relationship with the teachers union to ensure that negotiations are fair, timely, and focused on creating a supportive environment for educators?
Well, just like in any meeting, you need to have some ground rules, but we also need to make sure that the people who are there, as I said already, have experience inside of the school system or inside of schools. Okay. A lot of times we've even had people who've been, there have been times we've been having discussions that didn't include financial things, and we had people who had only financial background, right? Like if you haven't been inside the school, and we're talking about conduct between teachers, admin, and students, it needs to be those who have had that experience. And it needs to be people who respect the people in there. Like if they don't respect them, they shouldn't be in the room. And I need to be held to account for that to make sure that they are the people who are inside those negotiations. We also need to have just a good posture, a good tone, good tact. I mean, like we may be negotiating, but we're not enemies. We are, I mean, honestly, we all want the best for kids. I mean, it's like even in all this, no one's the enemy. Like we just may have differences of opinion. And so that is our goal. And that's what we should be doing is we keeping our kids in mind. They are the most important thing. We need to come together and remember to keep them as the focus.
Thank you. Mr. Hannah.
Yeah, my good friend Mark Feely used to have a saying that you circle the wagons and you shoot out. You don't circle the wagons and shoot in. And unfortunately, we've been shooting in too much over the last, especially coming out of COVID. And to Mr. Burgess's point, we're all in this together. I was a teacher. I've been with this district 37 years. I'm married to a teacher. Mr. Burgess was a teacher. It's us working collaboratively together. But when I say shooting out, I mean shooting out to the Florida legislature to demand better, because there's only so much we can solve internally. So I think we have to look to the legislature, and it's a matter of respect. When we're posting stuff on social media, it's not this us against them attitude. That the district said this and the union said that and this said that. One decision I have made though recently, I'm coming back to the table. I'm coming back to the table. I saw Scott Mazer push away from the table. And I pushed away from the table and we let people talk on our behalves. I'm done with that. I'm over it. Okay. Scott and I had a productive meeting. He's back at the table. I'm coming back at the table to speak for myself. And I think that's going to go a long way into settling some of the rhetoric differences that we've been having over the last year or so. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you. You heard it here first, folks.
You did.
Look forward to seeing you there. The next category is retaliation for advocacy. And we'll start with you, Mr. Hannah. Retaliation and trust are a concern with employees who decide to advocate for themselves. What will you do to ensure that there's a fair standard process in place that protects those who have legitimate concerns?
So I think I'm actually a victim of that. I may be the only superintendent of schools that's on probation simply for advocating for our teachers in our public school system. And I wrote an opinion article back in 2020 or 2022, and then followed it up with a letter, the infamous "You Do You" letter, and which then got me in hot water. There should never, ever be consequences for people speaking up and speaking out, ever. And if I find that we have administrators in this district that are silencing the voice of employees, they won't be administrators very long. Because everyone, and Christy and I had this conversation a lot. Speak up, speak up. Never be afraid to speak up. Your voice should never be silenced.
Thank you.
So, no, first of all, you don't want that as a culture. I think part of being a leader is being accountable. And, somebody, people are going to pat you on the back, and sometimes people tell you stink. And you have to be okay with that. And part of that is in serving, you're going to hear all sides of it, right? But if we're going to be honest and candid, right, I'm going to just tell you this on an admin level. We have certain folks who don't like us to speak up. I will tell you this, when I'm speaking to my teachers, I tell them when they don't speak up, that means that every parent and every family in their classroom has no voice. When I don't speak up as a principal, I have decided my entire community has no voice in a matter, which I find to be ridiculous. And I will continue to call that out. You need to speak up. You're representing someone. And I have no fear. Being a person of faith, I have no fear. I will speak up because you have to. Now, you can speak with tact, you can speak with tone, but you still have to speak up because somebody's counting on you. And so we do have situations in our district, and it doesn't mean it's rampant, but we do have situations and they need to be addressed. We know exactly who they are. And we know their ways, and we need to address it. And teachers and staff, they need to know that we're going to handle it. Sometimes now, let's not get too far off track. Sometimes it's teacher to teacher or staff member to staff member. They need to get themselves in order too. That's everybody. So we listen, when we're trying to be better, we have to be better across the board and not say anyone is above it. We have to say we have to make it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Right, our next question is going to start with you, Mr.
Okay.
Burgess. This is about mental health and wellness for teachers. With the growing demands on educators, how will you support teacher mental health and wellness, ensuring they have supportive environments at their site and access to the resources that are needed?
Okay, so this goes back. So I think it's important for us to have these discussions at a negotiating table, but then we have to immediately go back and we have to start with our administrators because they're the first people that you see in the building, which is, are you helping taking care of the employees? Because if they don't have their mental health in order, there's no way that they can serve the kids. There's no way. Two, we have to make sure we're finding ways to help support. Now, sometimes that just means a few more days or whatever the situation is, but it also means that we work with you, right? So we have programs like EAP and so forth, but also how are we working with you? Are we meeting your demands? When you're coming, we were just talking about when somebody brings an issue to you, are we actually being responsive to it? Are they floundering in a situation and we're just letting them flounder in there? You know, how are we addressing our employees' needs? Because usually those things lead to that. And then how we're supporting them at home, right? It's just, we have to be understanding, and it should be an open door policy where the teachers can come in and feel like they are heard, they are seen, that the issues have some resolutions. And then we also train up our administrators about how we deal with our employees.
Thank you, Mr. Hannah.
Well, I think it's having conversations with school leaders and teacher leaders. That if you have a department head and the department head notices that there's a member of their department that seems to be struggling, they know that they'll go to them and have a conversation and then turn to the administration at the school. And like Mr. Burgess said, we have a wonderful employee assistance program free of charge for all of our employees to help them deal with issues. And it could be the sudden death of a relative, something happened to their child. So whatever, we can do to have things in place to ensure that if our people need help, they can get help. And I think, again, whether you're a team leader in an elementary school or a department chair leader, if you're noticing that someone is having difficulty, that we get them the help they need and get it quickly. We've also increased our social workers. We have a dedicated social worker in all of our middle schools and high schools, and they can help with adults too. They're not just there to help with children. They can connect both students, families, and our employees with resources in the community to get the help they need.
Thank you.
And this is moving on to accountability for school leadership. What steps, this is for Mr. Hannah, what steps will you take to ensure school leaders are held accountable for creating a positive work culture where all school staff feel respected, valued, and supported in their roles?
So it goes back to what I said earlier about morale. Job one is safety. Job two is how people feel when they come to work, whether that's the teacher, whether it's the cafeteria manager, whether it's the parapro or the custodian. And that's very important to me. That's extremely important to the success of the school, the success of the school district. I think we can get a lot of feedback through climate surveys, and maybe we need to increase the frequency that we're doing climate surveys and getting feedback, anonymous feedback, honest feedback, and then using that in our decision-making process. And look, I'll just be bluntly honest. We have 40 40 schools. And most of the time I get it right, but from time to time, we'll get it wrong. And if we get it wrong, then we'll make adjustments as necessary. Because a school that has very low morale is not going to be successful. It's just not. And it's incumbent upon me to appoint school leaders that follow that same belief, that follow that same mindset. And if they don't, then we need to find another school leader.
Thank you. Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, so, and I believe your question was accountability for school leadership, right?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, you have to start with the way you model your own behavior, right? Because people are going to follow your lead. How you treat everyone else, they are going to follow in the same manner, because that's going to help begin to set the culture. So it's very important that we model our own behavior. But then it's just as important that the leaders that are, and I'm thinking of this in the superintendent's role, the leaders who are with me, that they also model that same behavior. And that they do that with the principals that they're serving, to make sure that they're modeling that behavior, and that the principals then are modeling that behavior with their staffs. One of the most difficult things is with 43 schools, we got 43 different leaders. But our culture could really help support that and say, what kind of things are we going to want to see? What is our expectations of how you handle the employees? And that's what I talked about in the way we resolve matters, the way that we deal with people, the way we conduct people. You know, there is just, you have to give expectations, and you can't have so much autonomy that people are just having kingdoms and whatever in a school, and people feel like they're tortured inside of it. We have to be responsive and make sure that we are addressing those matters for school accountability.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask the next question, Mr. Burgess. Will be your question first. This is gonna be on supporting students' social and emotional needs.
Okay.
How do you believe social and emotional health is impacting discipline in our schools? What can we do to help improve it?
So it's what I talked about before. I mean, it is that is a very layered question there, but it is important that every person on your campus is child-centered. You know, I always say the first question we got to ask is, do you like kids? Because kids are gonna stress you out. They're gonna get on your last nerves, and that's the ones you have in your house, right? Then we got to get to the ones that somebody else's child and you're dealing with them. And so there's a different kind of patience that you have to have, but you also have to give expectations to kids. Like sometimes you'll have a parent who doesn't want to hear expectations for their kids, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disappoint you. Because how am I going to send you out into the world and I didn't give you expectations? I loved you into failure. That is not okay. So we got to have some expectations. But part of that is supporting our students. We have to make sure we're asking students questions and saying, how are you doing? Having conversations with them every day. Now, also understand, teachers aren't social workers. That's what we have social workers for, but it doesn't mean that you can do some screening on the front end because you have a relationship with those students. So that's what we need to be talking about, is making sure that our students, that they are in a good position, because if they're going to learn, we got to make sure that they're in a good space. We're going to talk about teachers being in a good mental health space. We got to make sure that our students are in a good mental health space. And by the way, you may not have the question on there, but you better be asking if the parents are in a good mental health space, because they're part of the home support network. It is all part. And by the way, make sure leadership is in a good mental health space. And that includes everybody in here, right? Because we got to make sure we are. That's the only way we're going to get better, is making sure we take care of everything.
So, you know, we knew post-pandemic we were going to be dealing with two major issues. One was the academic regression that was going to take place as far as kids not being physically in school. And then second, their social emotional well-being and from being isolated for so long. So we, with the federal money we received, invested in people. We hired about 150 people, academic interventionists in all of our schools that could help with the academic regression. We put 3 academic interventionists at every school. We also committed to hiring social workers in all of our middle schools and high schools, and reduced the number of schools that are shared at the elementary level. For every elementary school that only had 1 guidance counselor, we added a second guidance counselor. So we invested heavily in people. That money ran out at the end of September of 2024. I'm proud to say, however, that we kept over 60% of those positions that were not in the staffing plan prior to the pandemic are now still in the staffing plan. So those additional counselors in our elementary schools, they're still there. The social workers in our secondary schools, they're still there. The academic interventionists, 2 of the 3 in our elementary schools, we were able to keep as well. So we saved during that time in order to address this issue, because we knew it wasn't just going to magically disappear in September of 2024. So we do have more boots on the ground and more people trying to help and trying to intervene to ensure that our kids are in a good space.
Thank you.
All right, and we're just gonna skip over to me. I'm gonna ask this of Mr. Hannah first. It concerns public access to high school tracks. How will you continue, or how will you address the concerns with the community access to high school tracks?
So our high school tracks and our high school facilities are meant for our students. When we receive taxpayer dollars, they are meant for our students. Not unlike Florida State University, you can't go to Campbell Stadium and have a flag football game on a Saturday, right? And there are inherent risks. And you see today, every bus out there is wrapped with Morgan & Morgan or some law firm. And so the inherent risks, and we can't supervise them, and they're there at midnight or all hours of the night and hours of the morning. We just can't ensure for the safety of the people that are there, number one. Number two is we invest money in those facilities. And when people are urinating on the tracks, they're leaving, dogs are walking the tracks, and you know what else dogs are leaving? Everybody doesn't bring their little plastic bag. There are inherent problems by opening our tracks to the general public. In Leon County and Tallahassee, we have Cascades Park. We have all kinds of walking trails and running trails and all sorts of public spaces for people to be able to exercise. But those our public schools are for our public school students.
Thank you.
So there's a legislation that makes this a little bit tricky, but we have in this community had a relationship with going to our public high schools and accessing the tracks. And so it is important that we look for solutions of how we can give some of this access. Now, this is not access while regular students are in their school day. That's definitely off the table. But this is after hours, after practices. And so there's got to be ways for us to come up with some workable solutions to try to help out those members of the community. We've had that relationship. I know when I moved here in 1994, going to Gabi and because I, going to Florida State, Gabi was right down the road. We accessed it all the time. And the incidents we're talking about, there may be some, but they were very rare. Right. Matter of fact, the only thing you really was worried about was people getting into some fisticuffs from time to time. But you want to have people to have access. It's one of the ways that we have a great relationship with our community, is that they're able to access those things free of charge. Right. Because everything out there right now is about money, money, money. I got to give you something to have access. And so taxpayers, they want a way to have that. We just really need to work hard on trying to find a solution and help those members out there who want to be able to access the tracks.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go in a completely different direction
Okay.
now. This is about attendance.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll say for the people in the room who don't know, I'm gonna say CSAP. CSAP is our online focus program that we enter data so we can track whether kids are in school or not. Attendance continues to, and this is gonna be for you first,
Yes.
Mr. Burgess. Attendance continues to be a concern at many school sites. What is your plan to address attendance problems and lessen the burden on classroom teachers to include the duplication of calls to parents, ensuring accurate information in our CSAP systems?
So, without not, violating any state statutes, it is very important that we find ways to streamline the process and we take whatever we can off the table or off the plate with teachers. Attendance is critical. I mean, there are 3 steps to successful schooling, right? First of all, I would say without, if you don't have, there's no ability without availability. So if we don't have kids show up to school, there's no way for them to learn. And then once we get the kids to school, we then have to get them to manage their behavior so that they can learn, right? Because the 3rd level is the learning that occurs. But goes back to attendance. And right now, like the CSAP process is cumbersome. It's a lot to ask a teacher. Even if you're talking about, if you got a kindergarten teacher that's got 20 students, doing the paperwork for them after an exhaustive day is hard to ask. Asking a middle school teacher who has, been with their English class, and they've had 125 students, that's hard. Asking a high school elective teacher who's had 300 students in a day to go and do CSAPs is tough. So we've got to find a way to streamline the process, make it easier. We also have to make sure that we get into the habit of making more visits to homes, having conversations. We've got to get, because look, there's no answer to this without talking to our parents and getting kids in school. We have kids who are allergic to school. And that is something that did come out of the pandemic. That's a real thing that happened. And so we've got to get, but we also have to make sure that we have engaging things at school, right? So I talk about the things like we have a club rush, and we've got everything from Mu Alpha Theta math team to a bass fishing team. You got to find some different things that are going to appeal to these kids. Because I was one of those kids. But look, the 4 core academic subjects, that's not the thing that draws them. There's got to be something else there to help draw. My fault.
So post-pandemic, this has become an issue, not only in Leon County, but throughout the country with attendance. And I'm not sure if it's a result of more people working from home, more parents maybe working from home, and more children that are staying at home. But I think it starts with a conversation with our parents in our community about the importance of children being in school each and every day. Because as Principal Burgess mentioned, that they aren't in school, they aren't learning, right? So it's having those conversations. Second, it's doing what we can locally to incentivize or to motivate kids to come to school. Like if you don't come to school X number of days, you can't go on the 6th grade field trip, or you can't be playing the basketball game that night, or we used to do things like that. So it's finding ways of things that we can do. One thing also that we used to do, we used to tie grades that we had attendance failures. So we, by law, are not allowed to do that. But I think it's going back to the legislature, because the legislature realizes this is an issue too statewide. And I think they are ready to make some policy changes to ensure and motivate parents as to the importance of sending their children to school. Last year, we took a number of parents to truancy court. There was just no teeth in it. There simply wasn't. And it took a lot of work and a lot of money for us to get to that point. At recent check, however, there is some positive news where our attendance, average daily attendance rates last year were about 86 or 87%. Most recently, we're back around 92 or 93% for average daily attendance. But kids still are missing too much, especially in our Title I schools. If they have inclement weather, what can we do? Can we get vans? The goal now is to get vans in our elementary schools where they can go around and get those kids, especially when it's 20 degrees outside or if it's raining, because they're more likely not to attend if the weather's bad. So it's us having conversations with parents, stressing the importance, and then strengthening, putting more teeth in what we can do locally, and then asking the legislature to help as well.
Thank you.
All right, your next question is going to be for you, Mr. Hanna, first. This is about supporting the arts in schools. How will you ensure that arts programs in our schools not only continue to thrive, but also grow, given their importance to a well-rounded education and the challenges of budget cuts?
Huge fan. I see Board Member Jones here. I see Marcus Nicholas here. Once I took office, I went to the school board and we talked about the importance of arts and athletic programs in our schools. And we have committed now $1 million a year, $500,000 to support the arts and $500,000 to support athletics, to reduce costs for their children to participate in those programs. I'm really proud of that effort and what we've done, and we will continue to do that. And additionally, most recently, the district years ago used to help with band equipment replacement and uniform replacement, and I guess that went away in 2007, 2008 during the recession. We are back now in the business of supporting our high school and our middle school bands, because the bands usually serve as the front porch of the performing arts program in our schools. And we have so many things for kids to choose from. It just blows me away. I went to Raw Middle School the other day, and they had a Hispanic festival to recognize Hispanic month, and they had the steel drums going, they had guitar going, they had the drama kids were performing. And this is what really motivates children to want to come to school. So we are, me along with the school board, are 100% committed to continue our full support of the arts.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess.
Yeah. So I'm going to give credit because our superintendent did give more money to the arts, and that should have happened. But I also want to tell you, it's something that we've always done here in Leon County, support our arts, and it's going to continue. In this town, we cannot have it where it's not. And I will just say, I was a kid in school who played the trombone and played football. You should be able to do both. And we actually need to encourage that. Matter of fact, even deeper conversation is talking to our performing arts, making sure that those kids can be able to do multiple activities and work well together. All right. I'm sorry, I apologize a little bit on the high school level right there, but that needs to happen. But we need to make sure that we also are working on the facilities. And also, if these monies come in, we also need to make sure that these programs get the monies before the school year starts, before fees are collected. Right? Because the biggest issue is the fees, right? That's money coming out of families' pocket immediately. So if we're going to do these things, and we need to do these things across the board, there's all kind of activities that we need to go into. Those kids, they need funds too. And we need to find ways as much as possible to reduce costs across the board for all the families, especially as much as inflation is costing. If any of the teachers here have put a trip together, throw that bus bill on there, right? That alone makes it an expensive trip. Right. So we need to find ways to help all those programs, but absolutely, we need to continue supporting our arts and even look to more and hopefully even starting younger. Because I was one of those students, I actually started in 3rd grade, and I would love to do that just because they have the ability to learn instruments at a much faster rate than we are when we're adults trying to learn it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're moving to classroom support for teachers with students that have diverse needs. General education teachers are increasingly overwhelmed by the number of students requiring accommodations. How will you ensure that teachers receive the support they need to manage classrooms with students who have IEPs, behavior plans, and other accommodations?
All right. So that's a multifaceted question. Yes.
Yes.
So first of all, this goes back to our teacher training, right? So I'm just going to start with what our youngest or newest teachers that we have inside the profession is that we actually train them on what those things mean, giving them strategies about doing that. Because part of the overwhelming nature is a lot of times, they're just told you got a blue man, green man inside of the focus system, and nobody's giving you the strategies about how to deal with that student. We also need to have conversations about what was successful the previous year. If you're a 7th grade teacher and this kid was successful 6th grade, what were they doing to be successful? We need to have conversations that go even beyond just our current grade level classroom. It's also important that how are we in the administrative roles, how are we being supported, right? Strategies that are going to help kids. This goes into scheduling. That's a big important role. Like the kids that are in there, do you need extra support? What does that look like? We just have to be mindful. We need to have conversations, and those teachers, especially because we can easily be talking about, with our ESC teachers, with our ESOL teachers, with our teachers that have 504 students. What can we do to help them be able to navigate their classrooms better? And we need to make sure that we're having conversations with them. They are invested. They give us information all the time. We just have to be willing to, put those plans into place.
Thank you.
So I hear a lot about this issue because I live with someone that deals with these types of situations, and I think professional development could certainly help, but it's also understanding what supports we can give our regular ed teachers. We moved to an inclusion model several years ago. Instead of isolating these kids and putting them in self-contained classrooms, we try our very best to use that inclusion model to have them assimilate and associate and educated with regular ed students. Sometimes that causes significant challenges for the students that are in that class and equal challenges for the teacher. But we needed to communicate what additional supports can we put in place, whether it's professional development or paraprofessionals or others, and what is working and what's not working. Maybe students really good in their science class because it's hands-on, but not so good in their math class, or continuing to have interventions that meet the individual needs of their students. And that's what our public school system's all about. It's what we've always been about. No child left behind. We are going to serve every single child we can that comes to our doors, no matter their exceptionality, no matter their needs, or no matter their interests.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna switch over to science education. And this is gonna be for Mr. Hannah first. Science and social studies education are important for students in our K-4 grades. How will you ensure that it is effectively implemented in these early years?
So at the start of every school year, I go around and visit with all of our principals, and we have conversations about lots of things. One, to make sure they have everyone hired. Do they need additional staffing? Do they need additional support for students with disabilities? And then we talk about curriculum issues and what they are doing in the areas that are tested, and then the areas that are not tested, to ensure that students are getting a well-rounded education, even in elementary school. And so it's continuing having those conversations and that dialogue. Science is not tested until 5th grade, but what are we doing in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade ahead of that fifth grade assessment? Civics is introduced in 7th grade, and history in 6th grade. But what are we doing ahead of that at younger years? But it's getting feedback, and again, open collaboration with our school administrators that are in there every single day, and with our teachers. And that's why we have Department of Academic Services, is to listen to the needs that we have, to ensure that all of our students at every grade level are getting a well-rounded education.
Thank you. Mr. Burgess.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the visits to schools. One of the things that we have to do differently, and I truly believe this, is that we need our visits to be earlier. So I will just tell you this, if our first time visiting a school, especially a school that may be struggling, and it's already into the first 9 weeks of the school year, it's too late. I'm gonna say that again, it's too late. We should be having these visits in the summertime. If it's a bad plan, I need to know it's a bad plan, and we need to change course immediately before the kids come in the door. If there's an issue with the staffing, I need to know that before the year starts, not after the year starts. That means that the school is behind the 8 ball, and now we're just going on hope, right? We need to have structured plans in place. When it comes to science and social studies implementation, and this is going back to my days in elementary, and forgive me, it's been a while since I've been there, but I do want to say this. Elementary teachers many times teach 5 subjects, right? They'll teach 5. I'll tell you, it's hard to know one. I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, and I say that in all due respect. It's hard to know one really well. A lot of times teachers will focus on things that they know better. They'll give more time to the things that they know better. So what we got to do is we got to incentivize, and that's part of our professional development work, trying to get them to know these areas, particularly science and social studies. Because when I was in elementary school, my teachers, when they came to reading and writing, man, they were phenomenal. I mean, that was the areas that they were comfortable with. And then I had others who were more comfortable with math, right? But we got to get you comfortable with a couple of areas, and especially with science and social studies, so we're not putting so much pressure on a 5th grade teacher in that last year to try to come up with some whimsical thing to get us points in science. It's got to be something we study every year. Same thing with social studies. How do you embed those topics into some of the other things that you do? Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, our next question is going to be on support staff concerns. Mr. Burgess, let's start with you. We know that support staff play a crucial role in our classrooms and school culture. Not all support staff are guaranteed a schedule that encompasses the full school day, 7.5 hours. What will you do to provide support staff with a full schedule?
Well, the only way you do that is through staffing. I mean, it's got to be dollars. So that, and so guaranteeing that, that wouldn't be right to say, right? Because you would have to say, I've got money to make sure you have, 7.5 hours covered. And it's need-based, right? Because every school, every site has different needs. Now, that also is saying that you're having conversations with your principals about making sure that support staff, let's say if you have somebody who was working 7.5 last year and all of a sudden they come back this year and only get 4.5, well, what happened? What was the issue? Why did you reduce them 3 hours? Because a lot of times that's the consternation that you have among support staff, is that the hours that they were given is not given the same the next year. And so there needs to be true dialogue about what's going on, because you have somebody, I'm willing to work 7.5 hours, which we look at as a full day. And why did my hours get reduced? And so we need to have complete, thorough explanations of what's going on, and the expectation of, I want to work, I have something to give, and I want to feel valued here at school.
Mr. Hannah?
So I think that comes, and I see Val here, it comes with negotiations with LESPA and 1010 and our support staff unions. We would love to employ everybody 7.5 or 8 hours a day, but there's a financial cost that's associated with that, right? And there's 3 things that really pull at our purse strings. One is additional stuff for teachers to have in classrooms, instructional materials and supplies. And we talked about that flexible budget. 2 is additional staff. We talked about additional guidance counselors and social workers and the salaries for those people. And then this would also be a financial expense to increase parapray from 6 hours a day to 7, or guarantee 7.5 or 8 hours. So it's prioritizing those things, along with, oh, by the way, salary increases for instructional and non-instructional people. But we are certainly open to that conversation. Most recently, we were at a school the other day and talked about potentially moving at least paras all to 7 hours a day or 7.5, because right now I think they're shifting. Some will come early, some will leave, and then another shift will come in if they're only 6 hours. But again, it's ongoing conversations with our LESPA union and our 1010 union, and then looking at the financial impact it would have in the big scheme of things.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of our questions, except I had a late breaking question from one of our most important constituent, which is a student. And he's here, and he's in the front row. His name's Sawyer, and he wants to be superintendent one day. So watch out. Studies show year-round school delivered in a 4-day school week or frequent breaks throughout the school year benefit children's learning and working families. Year-round school could also help fill in the gap for staff of Leon County schools. Paraprofessionals and bus staff, cafeteria workers would have year-round income, which would increase staff retention, which is a big issue at my mom's school, Gretchen Everhart, and other schools in the district. How do you feel about switching to a year-round school model, and what steps would you take to initiate in Leon County? And we are with
I think you should be sitting up here with us, because that's a really good question.
well done, Mr. Hannah. What do you think about year-round
So
school?
look, I think we look at the research, and what does the research say? And the research supports something like this. Let's think outside of the box. I'm all about thinking outside of the box and finding creative reasons to say yes. But this would also have to be enacted by the Florida legislature, because we're only funded in 2 survey periods, October and February. So this would something we'd have to push as a community, right, and get other communities to join us. But on the surface, to me, it sounds like a great idea. It does away with the drop off from summertime when kids are not in school. But at the end of the day, it's a conversation that we have with our legislature, and if we can find a way to do it, and then we have to talk about the financial impact that it's going to have on the district. If we can fund it, I say let's do it.
Thank you. Ms. Burgess?
All right. So what's your name, young man? Sawyer. All right. So that's awesome. All right. So first of all, I think one of the things we need to talk about is that schools have been based upon an agrarian calendar. All right. So I'm an old American history teacher. So an agrarian calendar, it was a farming calendar, right? Especially during our summer months when we had the crops, we wanted to make sure that kids were able to help their families on their farms. And so we, believe it or not, even in 2024, we still have our calendar set up on that model. I think it's a great question, because when I was principal at Springwood, one of the ways that I was able to turn my school around from a C to an A was getting kids to learn during the summer. We know one of the biggest difficulties that a lot of kids have, especially when we start talking about our Title I schools, is that kids during the summer do not have chances to learn. A lot of times it's based upon the income that your family has, right? You go take fabulous trips and things like that. So one of the things that we really need to have a conversation is with our community as well, right? Like right now they're talking about moving the school start times at a later time, but we also need to be talking about how we have schools. And one of the things to make it a little bit more palatable, because everybody's been used to having that summer vacation, right? You see the commercials, everybody, hey, we're going out to the summer. It's also important that we look at maybe something like 5 or 6 weeks, right? because we all need a little time away. It's just like, that's why y'all take vacation, because if not, y'all gonna kill each other, right? So y'all need it. You need that time. No, Disney, I think he deserves a Disney trip. I just want to put that in there. But it's but it's really important that we look at things like this, because it is about what's best for learning. And I think that was the epicenter of your question that you had. And so I would love to look at that. And money is one of the factors, but a bigger factor is what we are used to as a community. And I think it's important to have conversations like that. Matter of fact, continue to be the lead, because children have a way of shaming adults.
In a
They
good
really
way,
do.
in a good way.
Great.
In a great way. Yeah. So I'm very impressed. So,
All right, thank you. So we will move on to our closing statements, and Mr. Hannah began our debate. So Ms. Burgess, you can begin with your closing statement, and thank you.
all right. Well, first of all, thank you to LCTA. Thank you to LESPA. Thank you to everybody who came. I mean, because you could have been anywhere else. I mean, and this room is packed. But let me just tell you, it's it's essential what we do. The decisions that we make for education, it's vital. And so I do not take even trying to run for this office lightly. It is an honor to serve and to serve the community. And I promise you, I will do the job in a great way. I do want to mention this. Look, recently I was at a State Board of Education meeting. The superintendent was presenting, and I encourage everybody to look up the Florida Channel and go to the October 15th meeting and just look at it. We have to get better about what we're doing with our schools that are struggling. We have to give, we got to give better strategies. We got to have better plans on what we do for those schools. There's a lot of schools, man, they can almost be on autopilot. Okay, not that they are. No school is, but we've got to get better for those schools. Those communities deserve it. Actually, one of those schools, I actually own a home in that community. And I know that those parents, they want better and they want more. And we've got to do that. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank you all for having us, LCTA and LESPA. And like Principal Burgess said, you guys could be a million places right now. You're not. You're here. You're here because you care about our community. Most importantly, you care about our children, same things that we care about. And I'd like to thank Principal Burgess. When you see a lot of ugliness in campaigns and a lot of divisiveness, we've known each other for a long time. And I just want to thank him for the way he's handled this campaign. In 2015, Scott Mazer sent out a call to action. The legislature was having an event in the gym at Leon High School. Richard Corcoran was the Speaker of the House at the time, and we were all going to wear Band-Aids for budget cuts, right? Christy and I showed up and I sat in the bleachers. I was the only administrator there. I will continue to show up for our teachers each and every day because I was a former teacher and I'm married to a teacher. The day I forget what it's like to be a classroom teacher is the day I need to go home and do something else. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm proud of our accomplishments, but the job is not yet finished. With another 4 years in office, we can complete many of the tasks underway and position our school district well for continued success in the future. I will not let you down, and more importantly, I will not let our children down. Thank you again for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Give yourselves a hand.
Sawyer.